Hey, everybody, welcome to That Expert Show, where you help run the show. I'm Anna Canzano. Thanks for joining us for another episode. We've got a great topic lined up today. We are talking about cleaning, decluttering, organizing your home, your workspace. It is spring right now. I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and I know that the Marie Kondos of the world have made this topic quite popular. The idea that you should tidy up your living space or your workspace and lessen the load, take away the things that are weighing you down. We've got a fantastic expert lined up for you, a professional organizer who has worked with a variety of celebrities, including Jessica Alba. She has a background in the fashion industry, and she founded the company Clutter Healing. She works one-on-one with clients to help them understand what they need and how to let go of the rest. Joining us live from Los Angeles today is Lili Pettit. Lili, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Lili, you have some devoted fans and followers. I was checking out your website and the testimonials. You have really helped people change their lives. And when we start to think about organization, what is the main barrier you think that people have to overcome when they talk about trying to get organized or tidying up their spaces?
I think the biggest obstacle that people seem to bump up against is really getting started. There's a lot of overwhelm when it comes to organizing your space and not feeling maybe confident or really sure as to what the best way is to get started. And I think with a lot of people who desire organization, there's that perfectionism thing that can hang us up where we want to do it the right way so we don't start at all. And I find that most people are they're really overwhelmed. They feel like it's too much. They don't know where to begin.
I am completely in that corner. I wanted to start with one of the questions that we got from Facebook. As always, I post the topic of the show before Monday. Carolyn wants to know, how do you organize all of those kids' toys and clothes and just stuff? This is an issue that I face. I know that you're in the midst of that too. You're just starting that. You've got a little one. But I've got toddlers who seem to accumulate so much stuff. And I know I'm part of the problem because I'm buying that stuff.
Exactly. So I have several recommendations for that. So one is with the clothing. I know that these little ones grow so incredibly quickly. It's like you blink your eyes and they're already in the next size of clothing. So I recommend having a bin or a box or a bag or something in the closet, in the bedroom, in your garage, any place that's really easy for you to just toss in clothing that no longer fits your child as it's happening. Because I know what can happen a lot of times for parents is the child grows out of something and then they don't know what to do or where to put the stuff that no longer fits them. And same with clothes that they have to grow into. So maybe you have things that are a few sizes larger that aren't fitting them right now, or you have hand-me-downs or an older sibling, that you've been holding on to the clothing for. Just creating, a nice basket or a bin that's clearly labeled with what size clothing lives in that particular bin or basket, up in the top of a closet, in a garage, what have you, just so that they're everyday clothing that currently fits isn't mixed in with things that, don't fit, either too big or too small. But having that place to put the things that don't fit that you're wanting to give to a friend or to donate is really, really key in keeping the closet or, the bedroom space or wherever the clothing is living really, really optimally clear and clutter free.
And I think that same concept applies probably to toys as well, because when you have little ones, they're constantly growing out of toys that no longer suit them or no longer interest them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I found it's like this not having the home. I call everything home. So give everything a designated home, because when it doesn't have a home, it tends to just be an explosion all over your house, right? So it's really, really important to give kids, no matter how big or small they are, a place to call home for their toys and their things. So the clothes live here, the toys live there, this is our play space. So it doesn't feel super overwhelming, like their things are everywhere all over your house. It also, setting up a particular play space or setting up designated spaces for toys makes it really, really easy when your child is older to understand, okay, we play, then we clean up, and this is where everything goes. When it's really chaotic and spread out all over your house, it's hard to set your child up for success to have that relationship and understanding that, this is how we take care of our toys and this is where we put them back once we're done with them.
I'm cringing on the inside because everything that you're describing about what you're not supposed to do is literally what we do. So I guess you mentioned the idea of labels, and why is that so important when you're creating a home space for these things? I've often overlooked the importance of labels, I suppose.
I think it's really important because then it's very clear to everybody who's sharing this space because, if you have a significant other or you have a housekeeper or you have someone who's a nanny, a childcare person, anybody who's coming into your home will have a very clear knowledge and understanding of where things go. Even for myself, I have the 6 to 9 month things are in one spot ready for her to, be swapped out of the dresser. And it's very easy for people who are helping or even myself to know, okay, if I get a gift from someone, it doesn't fit her right now, it's going to go in this basket. And without having that, it can be very, very easy to just, shove things in a bag, leave it in a closet, and then boom, the time has come and gone that you didn't even get to use the thing that you wanted to use because you didn't know that it existed. So labels are really imperative, I believe, for your sanity.
Guilty as charged again. Yes. Yeah, really. Like literally, we have a 4-year-old, and there was an item that I had set aside because I'm like, oh, she's going to grow into this, and I totally passed that window. Unfortunately, we have another one coming up along the way who's 2, and I'm like, well, we'll give it a shot the second time around. Okay, so let's talk about the idea of going out and getting organized, because my idea of getting organized is going to Home Depot and purchasing like 14 large bins, or maybe going to the Container Store and buying a bunch of clear storage bins to try and shove everything into. And you're saying that maybe that's not the solution?
So this is the thing that, tons of people come to me all the time with, right? Or they've maybe gone to the Container Store and they have tons of organizing supplies, but yet they still don't feel organized because you're just adding more stuff into your space when you go and get the organizing supplies. And really, the process that I like to teach my clients to do is to, sort everything first, figure out what you have, donate, recycle, get rid of all the things that aren't working for you anymore, and then go and purchase organizing supplies. Because if you just go and buy 14 plastic totes that are, really large, and you only have one small section of, let's say, clothes to grow into for your child or toys that they've outgrown or whatnot, there's no point in needing to store these 15 giant plastic bins. So it's really about knowing your inventory, understanding what it is that you have before you go and buy the organizing supplies. What ends up happening with a lot of people is they buy the organizing supplies, they realize that they don't need them, and then they're just an accumulated addition to the clutter and kind of a big waste of money, right? Because they just don't get used properly or they don't get used at all.
Right.
And that return that you've been wanting to do, that also is clutter, right?
Yes.
So that's another thing on your plate that you want to get done, but then it ends up not happening. So you've lost the money, you've lost the time, you've lost the money. If instead of just really getting clear on what it is that you need to store and why you need to store it. I mean, is it something that you really need to hold on to? So these are all things that I really teach my clients to do in an efficient way.
But that can be a really hard decision to make. I mean, I think that there were multiple people on social media who had that question. It's like Maria, for example, on Facebook said, how do you part with things that you've been given from even years ago without feeling guilty, especially if something is somewhat sentimental? It's hard to part with it.
So in dealing with those situations, yes, there are going to be things that are, irreplaceable. So if you have sentimental items that you feel like you cannot part with, I'm not one to tell someone, do not get rid of this thing. What I really want people to explore and get interested in is, are you keeping something out of guilt, and is that keeping you up at night? So are you holding on to, 20 boxes full of ceramic sculptures that your aunt so-and-so gave you when she passed on that you just don't care about, and it's causing you anxiety, stress, sleepless nights, because that's taking up space in your life and in your mental space, right? So if you're thinking about those things that aren't getting used, that are taking up space in your home and they're not making you happy, then really what is the motivation to keep them? Because I don't believe that guilt is something that guilt is self-imposed. It's not something that someone else is doing to you. You're making the choice to feel guilty about keeping or letting go of something. So I always, tell my clients this is a choice. What you have in your home and how you let it affect you is really a choice. And having the things in your house that make you feel good and give you energy and allow you to sleep well at night and not take up a lot of mental bandwidth is a really, really important thing. And it's not, Marie Kondo said something about giving and receiving gifts. It's never about the actual physical item. It's not about the gift. It's about the energy that you receive. It's the energy exchange between two people and having that experience with the other human, right? It's about this person, they thought of you, they went to the trouble of picking out something nice for you, and then they wrapped it beautifully maybe, and then they passed it on to you, and that made them feel really good. That is the thing that should be treasured and really embraced versus the actual thing. And if you don't like the thing that someone gave you, I give you full permission right now to give it to someone else that might like it. Donate it to, a charity that can use it wisely, and just let go of the guilt. It's okay. It's okay to get rid of things that people gave you. I promise.
It's fascinating because it's not just the physical clearing up of your space. I mean, your company is called Clutter Healing. So it's literally like all this stuff around you in your home in what is supposed to be your sacred space can literally feel like it's kind of like weighing down your spirit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And our things are made up of energy, just like we're made up of energy. Our thoughts are made up of energy. Every single thing in our home is got an energetic vibration. And the more stuff you have in your house or in a space, the more dust it's going to collect, the more energy and space it's going to take up. And it can make your home start to feel really dense and really heavy. And the less stuff you have, you tend to feel that people say, oh, after they do a decluttering session, I feel like I can breathe again. I feel like there's so much space. I feel like I can relax. And that's because you've literally created more space within your space once you let go of things.
Interesting. Let's go to another room in the house, which is the kitchen. Assuming that not everybody has, a Kardashian style home with an abundance of storage space, what recommendations or advice or strategies do you have for organizing your kitchen? I know for myself, there's a lot of things in my kitchen that I simply can't even reach because they're just in cabinets that, if I had to reach something that was in the back of the cabinet, it's just not going to happen. It's like it doesn't even exist to me.
Right, of course. I mean, with anything, I always organize by ease of use and by frequency of use. So if there are things that you're only using once a year, such as that roasting pan that you only make a turkey in, or you only, use once a year, or a potato masher, or things like that, that you have and you do use maybe, annually or biannually, I do look at the space and put things in their homes accordingly. So using things and placing things up in super, super high cabinets that maybe you don't need all the time makes a lot of sense. Whereas that eye level space for things that are getting used on a regular basis is really vital and really important. And also just getting really clear on, do you really need these things? I mean, there are so many kitchen gadgets nowadays that I am constantly in awe of, because honestly, you can just use a knife to do that. I mean, there are so many things like a apple core and a pineapple core and a cherry pitter and, so many gadgets that I pause and hesitate to, ask my clients, do you really need this? Because a simple knife will do a lot of the same tricks that some of these excessive kitchen gadgets are doing. And, even for myself, I had a juicer for a really, really long time, taking up, valuable real estate in a corner cabinet. And someone that I was seeing for, facial, she's like, I really need a juicer. I'm like, great, I have a juicer. You can have it because I'm not using it. It's been sitting there. And yes, it was expensive, but if you really want to juice and use it and you're going to use it, please, by all means. So again, it's just getting really honest with yourself and what it is that you need and what it is that you're using, and really doing your best to let go of that someday syndrome, which is like, someday I might use this, or what if someday I need this? But if that someday hasn't come within about a year, you're probably not going to use it. So
I think
again, it's
that,
like,
yeah, that someday applies to a lot of my clothing because it's like
mhm,
someday I'll fit into those jeans again, or
right,
someday that top will be back in fashion. I have a really hard
right.
time parting with clothes. I'll be honest. I mean, some items of clothing I've had literally since college, and it's like I
Mhm.
know I can't fit into them anymore, but it is wishful thinking. And so you think that that year benchmark is the same kind of concept that can apply to your clothes and your shoes?
I think everything, honestly. I mean, yes, clothes and shoes. And I understand, especially for women, it is more challenging to get rid of, a really expensive pair of shoes because so much in fashion does come back around, right? I mean, it's time and time again, you see things coming back in fashion again. However, if it doesn't fit you, I feel like it's that thing again where you're holding on to things that you're trying to fit into a life that maybe isn't the life that you have currently. So it's not really working for you the way that it could be working for you. Again, taking up time, energy, space, valuable real estate. And if you let go of those things that you're not wearing, you're not using, I promise that you're going to save so much more time getting dressed in the morning. The less options you have,
Hmm.
the easier it makes your life. I mean, this is why Steve Jobs had a uniform, right? He just wasn't concerned about fashion and wardrobe. He was very focused on his career and his profession. And a lot of very, very highly successful people tend to have a uniform because it is efficient and it just makes things work faster, and it takes away a lot of the stress and anxiety around not having something fit you or having to make a lot of choices when maybe there are other things that are more important during your day.
Oh, I like that idea. A uniform. All right. I think my husband already employs that, but just sort of accidentally because he
Right.
just always buys the same stuff. Um, when it comes to the garage, for example, as we're going room to room, Derek on
Hmm.
Twitter wants to know about garage organization, says that he has a 3-car garage with no shed. What is the best use of that third bay for all of his yard tools and bikes? He doesn't know where to start.
Using the wall with hooks and storage, and having any kind of wall system. There are so many options out there, Home Depot, Lowe's. I mean, tons of different garage vendors out there like Monkey Bars, and different professionals in anybody's area can come and make you a beautiful built-in custom garage situation. It really depends on your needs. If you have a lot of tools, getting a proper vertical toolbox that rolls around and you can kind of maneuver that from place to place where you're working on things. I love those a lot. And I also love, putting hooks up everywhere and using every single inch of vertical space. So getting really smart with, if you have holiday decorations or things you're only using once a year, I love those systems that hook up into the ceiling where you can store bins and boxes of things that you don't necessarily use all the time, camping
Hmm.
gear, the holiday decorations. There are even amazing, I've used them in the past, bike storage things that are on a pulley system so they can go up on the ceiling as well. There's an umpteen amount of storage solutions out there. But again, it's like looking at what you have, what it is that you really use, and putting things in places that make sense. So if you do a lot of yard work and a lot of gardening, then absolutely you're going to need access to the rake and the shovel and any of that sort of stuff, maybe on a wall versus putting things in bins and boxes on even simple, wire shelving units, and categorizing it in a way that makes a lot of sense. And again, things that you don't use that often, use the vertical space, put them up really high, and everything else at that eye level place that makes it really easy for you to see and replenish if you need to.
That makes a lot of sense. Doug has a similar
Mhm.
question, but his has more to do with his shed and the cabinets in the shed. Again, mostly stuff for projects that he plans on doing someday, but he admits that in some cases it's been 10 years. How does he go through and decide whether he'll complete those projects or not and what to get rid of?
I find this with, any of these kinds of things. I mean, we're working on a really big project right now with a client who's saved paperwork from the 1980s. I mean, everything, I mean, faxes and even jokes that he printed from, the internet. So there's just like bins and bins and bins and bins of paperwork that we're going through. And, I've dealt with a lot of these situations where it's 10, 20, 30 years of things that haven't been addressed. They haven't been touched. They haven't been looked at. And I always ask my clients, so what would happen if we just got rid of all of it? Like, would that be devastating? Would it matter? Because you haven't been looking at any of these things for so long. I mean, 10 years is a long time to not be actively involved in whatever the project might be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the worst thing that could happen if you just got rid of all of it? It's not like it's been in your life and it's active and it's something that you're working on. Would it really make a difference? Because it's not playing a role currently. Other things are more important. So when you're sitting down and you're looking at these things in your shed that you haven't touched in 10 years, I always like to ask people, that question, what would it feel like, or what would it be like if it just was gone? And if you wanted to do each one of these things, I mean, what would it look like on a schedule? Like, is it something you can set aside one weekend a month to finish a project, and then knock them all out within a year or something? Or is that maybe it's not really important to you anymore? Maybe there are other projects and other things that you would rather do with your time than to dive into those projects that have been sitting around for 10 years. I'd be curious to know what that person would feel like looking at the items. And because a lot of times we just forget, right? I mean, we forget what it is. It's been so long that we completely don't even remember. And oftentimes when I go through big projects like that with my clients, they come to the realization that it doesn't matter, or I don't care about that. I'm not interested in that anymore. So it becomes a lot easier to get rid of things when you're actually in it and with it and seeing and feeling how important it is to you at this time in your life.
I feel like, I mean, if you're undertaking this project alone, that's where I get a little paralyzed and stymied, is like I'm trying to decide between, a basket of toys that I think maybe should be given away, and I'm just stymied. Is it helpful to have somebody who, for example, doesn't live with you, go through that process with you because they're looking at it with more objective eyes?
Yes. I mean, I have had many, people come to me and say, well, my best friend's really great at organizing, or, kind of as the voice of reason, because I think when it's our own things, we do have a challenging time getting rid of it, right? I mean, we've maybe purchased it or we've inherited it, and it is a bit challenging to get rid of things on our own. I mean, I do this for a living, and I still have a hard time going through my own clothes because of my wardrobe background. I look at things in a different perspective, right? I think, oh, but I could put this with this, or I could, take this sleeve off, or I kind of always think that there could be a second life for certain things in my closet. So it's harder for me with those things. It's very, very easy for me to get rid of paper or things in my office or things in the kitchen. I don't have attachments to those things, but absolutely, if you have a friend or if you have somebody that can kind of play that, voice of reason for you and ask you a few of the tough questions. Is this important to you? Does this matter? Is this taking up, mental space where you're thinking about it and maybe not being fully present for things that you want to be present for in your life? Are you thinking about the closet that you need to clean out when you're, wanting to be spending time with your children or engaging in an art project with your kids or going on a beach day or on a hike or something? But yet in the back of your mind, these things are weighing you down. What's more important, being fully present for your family and your relationships, or holding on to something that you haven't been giving, haven't addressed or haven't given attention to? So that's, and back to the shed thing with the 10 years of projects that haven't been addressed, it's like, where do you want to spend your energy? Do you want these things, weighing you down in your subconscious mind, or do you want to be fully present and fully aware and fully in your activities And that's where I think a lot of the clutter really holds us back, is that we're thinking about it all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. There's kind of always this thing like, oh, I really should go through that closet, or, oh, I know I bought this pair of shoes. I should really get rid of a pair of shoes. And instead of just taking action and doing something about it when you're thinking about it, we delay, 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 and then we have this accumulation of clutter in our minds in addition to the clutter accumulation in our houses. So taking action is so imperative to any sort of organization project, and setting aside the time for it really on a daily, monthly, daily, weekly, monthly. Certain projects are going to require your attention. Let's say biannually, you should go through your garage, whereas, picking up the toys and just kind of doing a quick reset at the end of every night is also the only way that your house is going to stay organized.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned paperwork, and that's one of my challenges, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of people with, multiple children. Kids bring home a lot of paperwork, whether it's that coloring sheet that was handed to them at a daycare center or, a McDonald's Happy Meal toy that is their new prized possession for the next 30 seconds, but hangs around the house for 2 years. Or whether it's just all the paperwork that comes home from school. There's a lot of handouts and artwork and things like that. What would be your recommendation for that central space in the home where things just gather? I know everybody, every family has that, or even if you're, living alone, you have that space where your keys and everything just kind of gets dumped, and that mountain can grow pretty quickly in a week or two.
Right. So it's not going to go away by itself.
Oh.
You're going to, you're putting the stuff on the pile. So you're going to have to be the one to go through and make the pile go away. And it's fine, have a basket for mail, have a bowl for your keys. I definitely don't expect everyone to be going through their mail every single day, because it's just not possible. But it is something that, let the mail build up for a week, and then you set aside 30 minutes on Sunday to go through that pile. And with kids stuff, I know that it can be challenging to get rid of things, especially with all the cute, artwork and things that they do. So what I often do with a lot of my clients is just create a bin or a basket, let it accumulate for 30 days. And then at the end of the month, go through it and just pick out the things that are really, really special. So coloring in, let's say a Xerox copy of, a caricature or something that they've colored in from a handout at school is a little bit different than, something that they've created with, the beans or the pasta and the lentils and glitter, and, that's more of their own creation. I always find those to be a little bit more special and interesting, something that they've freeformed and created themselves versus something that they were just handed at school and kind of, colored in the lines. So I like to look at and advise my clients on keeping the things that are really special and really show our children's personality and their artistic endeavors, and then letting go of the rest. And setting limits with your children very early on with, I just wrote a blog post about this, but all the goodie bags they get from birthday parties, the Happy Meal toys, the birthday presents, it's Christmas presents, holiday presents, whatever. It can become very overwhelming. So setting limits with your children very, very early on of whatever it works for you. So, hey, you got this goodie bag from this birthday party. Amazing. So why don't we pick one thing that you want to keep, and then we're going to donate the rest. Or birthday party comes around, you get tons of new toys for the birthday. Great, amazing. So all these new things are going to come in, you love them, and then let's go through the current toys and see what you don't like anymore, what you're not playing with anymore, what maybe some other children could benefit from who don't have as much as we do. Because at the end of the day, you're the adult and they're the child. So you are in charge and in control of setting healthy boundaries, setting, limit setting with them. And it's, setting them up for a really healthy relationship with their things, and understanding that you don't necessarily need to have a lot. And kids get really overwhelmed with a lot of options. It's much easier for them to have a lot of creative play with things that when there isn't a lot, because they get really overwhelmed and overstimulated when there are tons and tons and tons of options. And you'll probably notice that your child tends to gravitate toward the same thing over and over again, even when there are tons of things in a room. So I would just stress and allow, I mean, I can't tell you how many parents have told me that the shoebox or the empty toilet paper roll holder was the more interesting toy than all the other things in the room. A stick or a rock or something tends to be the thing that they go toward. So you don't have to always indulge in every single new toy or new thing that's out there. And I think it's really important to, allow them to be able to play and explore and be creative with things that maybe already exist in your home versus bringing tons of new things in all the time. But the one in, one out rule, I think, is really, really important for everyone, adults and kids. One thing in that's new and then letting something go. Letting one thing in and one thing out.
Yep, I like that idea a lot. You mentioned the artwork. I know there are services, depending on your budget level, that you can actually send your kids' artwork into now, and even 3D things that they create, and they will create a full photo book of those items, so you don't have to have the actual artwork, but they'll sort of archive for you in a book your kids' artwork. So that's an interesting option that I've looked into. I've also, I will not pretend to be an expert on any kind of kid toy organization thing, but something that I picked up along the way was creating a cycle of toys. So I'll take away 2/3 of my kids' toys and store them in the garage in clear plastic bins, and only have them play with 1/3 of the toys that they own. And then every month or two, once they seem to get tired of that particular set of toys, I'll circle back to one of the other sets of toys, and it's like it's brand new because they haven't, they're toddlers, they haven't seen it in a month or two, and it's all of a sudden new to them again. So I've found that somewhat effective.
Yeah, I've done that with a lot of my clients, and I've also, as far as decluttering goes, and depending on their age, having them be involved in the process, I think, is also a really wonderful thing. I've been doing more and more editing with children, starting around ages 7 or 8, and a lot of them get really into it. They really enjoy being a part of the process and understanding. It's amazing to me how many kids are like, can I label this? Can I use your label maker? So a lot of them will probably be a lot more into it than you may be ready for. So getting them involved when you feel like it's age appropriate is also a really beautiful thing. I never recommend going through and taking away a bunch of toys, and then they come home from school and they're like, where's this thing? And, I think it's really important because that can set up a lot of behavior later on for feeling like things were taken away from them and they weren't consulted, they weren't involved in the process. And that can be really devastating and cause, set them up for more of not necessarily a hoarding mentality, but, wanting to keep all of their things or be in control and in charge of their things later on in life. So the more you can get them involved in an understanding why you're getting rid of things or where they're going, the better, I believe.
The same concept can apply to significant others in your life. I think I'm guilty of making things disappear. Where'd you put that? I don't know. We were having a party, so it just went in the garage somewhere.
Right,
Oops.
right.
Creating that insecurity in children and grown men in my life. Grown man, singular. Hey, Lili, thank you so much for your expertise today. Any parting thoughts that you wanted to leave us with?
Yeah, my philosophy, is really about just that being organized is a really beautiful thing. And to get very clear with first why you're wanting organization in your life, setting an intention before you start any project. So knowing how you want your space to function and feel, how you want certain rooms to work for you. So if you're doing work in this particular room, let's not make that the place where you're then playing with your kids and doing a million other things. Having really clear intentions for each of your spaces, I think, is a really great way to kind of have that flow in your home. And then, looking at organization as something just like you would do with your exercise routine, with any sort of, health or diet behaviors. It's something that you engage in every single day. It's a way of living. It's a way of life. It's not something that you just do one time and then you're organized forever. Your home is a living, breathing, viable thing, and it needs your attention, support, nourishment, all of that stuff on a really regular basis. So not getting organized, but being organized is what I love to teach people.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your expertise. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of That Expert Show. Hope you got something out of it. I sure did. I'm motivated now to go into my house and look at what, I don't really need and try to get rid of it and maybe have some conversations with my family about it as well. Remember, you can always connect with us on social media. I'm on Facebook at Anna Canzano, on Twitter and Instagram at That Expert Show. Tell me what you think about the show, if you've got thoughts or ideas for topics that we should cover. I know watching a show live doesn't always fit into your schedule, so we always put our content back out to you on our YouTube channel, That Expert Show, or as a podcast on Apple iTunes, Google Play, wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. You can also check out previous content on thatexpertshow.com. Hey, hope this was helpful for you. Give us a like if you see this, or share this content with a friend that you might think would benefit from it. And I hope you'll join us for the next episode of That Expert Show, where you help run the show.